Okay, today in our second part of our glazing demo, I'm going to show you a few more things. We'll do the coil pod and the rattle, and with that demos, you should be able to do your sculpture in the same way. You're going to get a couple buckets of glaze today, and you're going to, or this week, I'm not quite sure which ones you're going to give, and that's determined by my boss. But last quarter we got one called Summer Green, which is this Celadon dark grass green color, and one called Oatmeal. These two samples were glazed in our reduction kiln. Same two glazes in the oxidation. So you really got four choices here. This is still transparent. It's a little green where it's thick. The oatmeal comes out white in the electric kilns, and you can decide which you prefer on your work. Warning though, we're going to clean off the bottom of our pots. If you bring them in and they are not cleaned on the bottom, the people firing the kilns will put a little cookie underneath it, and this one's stuck. There will be deductions for pots stuck to cookies, okay? And first up, we're going to need a few things. I have a little bucket here. I've got some water and a clean container to pour my glaze. Also, I've got something to stir these glazes with. Every time you open this container and you're about to glaze some work, stir it up as good as you can. It should be really smooth. It should not have any lumps or gunk in it. After it's settled for a while, it will have a thick layer on the bottom of the bucket. And we need to stir that up because that gunk on the bottom contains a lot of the minerals that make our color. If you don't stir this up and you use it to glaze your pot, you're going to get more or less almost a varnish-like coat on it. It won't have any color in it whatsoever. Okay? And here's my rattle, and I've waxed it. You can see where I drew a line with pencil around it. This is the only way it was going to sit. I could have glazed it on to my little donut if I wanted to. That'd be very stable. But this is what I'm going to do. I've coated the eyes with a different glaze. Then I'm going to pour all over it. And then I waxed that to keep that color the same as what I'd like. With glazes, it's not like paint. Meaning, if you put one on top of another, you're not going to get an in-between color. You're going to get a completely third different glaze because they're based on the minerals in each glaze. I realize this will be a hard project for you. You won't really know what the glazes are going to look like till they're fired, and this is our one shot because of the pandemic to glaze. So this is where we ask you to be courageous and just go ahead and take chances with your work, because you won't know what they're going to come out like until you get them back, and there's just no way around that. So I've let my wax dry. Oh, and this pencil line, I went around the pot here and held my pencil, and the pencil mark will just burn out, and then I waxed inside of it. I gave myself a generous extra addition so that my rattle wouldn't end up stuck on a cookie. Now I've got this little container. you only have your 2 buckets of glaze. So you have to make sure you catch any overflow and save it, okay? Also, I've got a little wad of paper here, a little spit wad, because I want to keep the rattles from getting glaze inside of them, which will help. Now, so I'm getting ready. I also use these lids that the glaze came in to hold my spatulas. So what I'm going to do is, now I'm going to have a little bit of trouble with the back side of those ears because I'm not going to be able to get them from the pouring. So I might have to do a little more than now. It's all in glaze. I can't touch it while it's wet, so that's a heck of a deal. But this pot will absorb that glaze and it'll change colors. Oh, and I missed a spot there, didn't I? So if I don't want that to be bare clay, then I'm gonna have to. What I like about these little plastic containers is that they can be bent to make nice I'm going to leave that till it dries. When you pour and you overlap this in any way, those different lines will show up. Unless you take your finger when it's completely dry and just gently finger sand it down to the same level as the rest of it. Now, it's starting to dry. So I'm waiting some more. Now, while we're waiting for that, this is my coil pot, and I've waxed it on the base. But again, I've waxed way up the side so that the glaze hopefully will not run down the side and stick this pot to the base. Fortunately, I have, can I move that without tipping it over?
If you're brave.
Don't do this. So I have, fortunately, another container, and I've got some sticks here that I use to prop up my pots when I want to glaze them. Now, one of the things about your coil pot is you may want to put a glaze on the inside and swirl it around and pull it out before you glaze the outside. That way, if you get some big drips on the outside, you can sponge them off, if that's what you think you might want to do. So, I have a second glaze is right here. Now, your figurative sculpture won't really have an inside that you need to glaze. So you'll just be glazing the outside if you want to. Now, with your coil pots, oh, okay, yeah. pour that in, and then what I'm going to do is just roll it around. Now you can see that I'm getting some glaze on the outside, and because I've got some holes there, and I'm just taking that down a little. Okay, and I wanted to pour on the outside.
If you're changing glazes, you should change out the bucket in between.
Yeah, yes, it's a good point. We don't want to contaminate each bucket of glaze by, for instance, pouring glaze on a pot of one kind of glaze and then leaving it in there and pouring the other. Who knows what that'll be? And it might be something that melts real easily, which means your glaze is going to come completely off your pot. It's certainly going to foul up the color of your glaze. So this is all one color. Do not stir your glaze with a spatula or a stick from one glaze. Clean it off in between. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start at a particular part, and I'm really just pouring right on the waxed area. Okay, and you can already see parts of it starting to dry. Wax is resisting well. If you forget to wax, you will have a chore ahead of you, because it can be rather difficult to clean that up once the pot has absorbed it, but you'll have to, you must do that. Okay, so that's my coil pot. Once it dries like that, you can touch it without it sticking to your fingers. Be patient, let it change color on you. And there's that. Now, before we move on, there's another possibility. If you don't want to just pour glaze on your coil pot, maybe what you can do is just put it away. Oops, sorry. Ooh, wrong container. So do be careful about the spillage, because you're going to need all this glaze for your pieces. You're going to do your cups just the same way as you did your pinch pots. All right, but what I was going to show you was you could take a sponge and a little glaze and push it into the texture, okay? And then clean your sponge, get all the water out of it, and then pull it back over that. What's going to happen is the glaze is going to stick down in the creases of your coils, and the sponge is just taking the glaze off of the high spots. And so that's going to highlight all that texture. Now, the secret to this is don't scrub so very hard, because you'll take that glaze right out of those crevices. And right now what will happen is that glaze will be shiny and a slightly different color than below, okay? So you could do that as well. One thing I want to point out before we move on is in the gas kiln, the reduction, can you see how much darker the clay is than in the electric kiln? So, you know, that's just the way it is. And don't be shocked when you see that happen. All right? So good luck. And thanks for watching this, and have fun with your glazing.